Hello everyone. I want to start to tell you why actually I started this artistic research. Around the wetlands. So basically, it's because of the very personal reason. I grew up in a peat mining settlement shaped by the legacy of peat industry. This settlement was part of the Bolsheviks' electrification plan, so-called Goyer Law Plan, the State Commission for Electrification of Russia. The idea of this plan was to extract local fuels, produce energy nearby, and transmit it nationally. So electrification for the Soviets or for Bolsheviks at the beginning was seen as a direct way to the communism. In Soviet narrative, nature has to become an endlessly useful and controllable force, and human a new socialist person. Settlements like mine were just the satellite projects to the major infrastructure, for example, the Shatura peat power station. Its construction was finished in around 1924, and peat was extracted in my settlement and transported via narrow gauge railway to the power station. After the USSR dissolved, the peat industry declined, and a lot of people, of course, left. And those who remained in the settlement became some kind of nostalgic to industrial past, forgetting the consequences of it, like annual fires or hard labor. And I began this project thinking about identity and these gaps in the post-industrial memory. But the deeper I went, the more I uncovered a layered history and complexity around peatlands. Currently, I'm working on a script that touched Soviet legacies of peat extraction alongside research into contemporary narratives around peatlands in Latvia, Finland, Germany, and Russia. And I'm mostly interested in how imperial legacies persist, how wetlands are narrated and visualized, and how it shifts over the time. And two ideas have become central to this analysis: the state of the witness and the state of resource. These two concepts drawing from the works of Sheila Sheikh and Gavin Bridge. So Sheikh, she challenged the divide between human and nature, seeing environment as an active witnesses who are deeply engaged with the human histories. For her, landscape holds and register violence over the time through material traces, atmospheres, and absences. Bridge argues that resources are not fixed things, but social constructs. So he cites Erich Zimmermann: resources are not, they become. A material only becomes a resource when it fits a particular moment, when it becomes useful for someone, somewhere, sometime. So in my research, I think of peatland as and communities with them as the both witnesses and resources. For nearly 2 centuries, the region I'm coming from has been reshaped by drainage and peat extraction. The soil, the presence or absence of particular plants or animals, gas emission, annual fires, all of it are material traces of these processes. Women who worked in the peat fields during the Soviet times carried these traces within their bodies. During the 8-hour shift, one woman might carry up to 5 tons of peat on her shoulders. A Soviet medical study from 1931 found that 61 out of 100 workers suffered from chronic menstrual disorder. Heavy lifting led to the uterine prolapse, and infertility was very common. At the same time, all these female workers was portrayed by propaganda as some kind of heroines who are always ready to sacrifice their lives for the country and government. So this pain they carried in their bodies lives only in very rare oral histories. In the Soviet period, both peat and labor were treated as the sources for electrification, but this legacy didn't end with the USSR. In Myzinovsky, the settlements I come from, extraction was, in the 90s, extractions was drastically reduced, but never really stopped. In 2016, the Russian government reclassified peat as a renewable energy source. There was plan made to increase its usage and to revive jobs in so-called depressive rural areas. And here's ironic detail. One of Russia's 35 Ramsar protected wetland sites list coordinates that is almost exactly match the place I'm coming from. So it's this one small circle. But the official description refers to nearby area, actually in neighbor region. Yes. So meanwhile, this actual location marked by the coordinates, even with the status national park and formal protection, peat extraction never really stopped there, but even intensified in the last 10 years. So as we already heard today, so this coexistence of parallel protection and extraction is happening not only in Russia. Last September, I visited the former Balozi peat factory in Latvia, built with the same logic as my own settlement. It once supplied Riga power station, which worked on peat during the Soviet occupation. So I was interested in what left was in the land and in the communities. So the industrialization was visible, but peat still harvested there. Just now, mostly for the export reasons. I spoke with the former workers, scientists, and people from the current industry, and these imperial legacies are still present. For example, extraction continues in the places drained during the Soviet era. What's changed the status of this natural resource? Peat became substrate. In many conversations with the people there, two topics kept coming up. First, even though peat is no longer widely used for the heating or energy, some still see it as an important local fuel, especially in the light of Russian imperialism and desire for the energy independence. The second was a shared belief that peat extraction will likely end in the next, let's say, 20, 50 years. But until then, people feel strong need to sustain their livelihoods, so the work continues whenever it's still allowed. So these concerns are very real whenever it's economical survival or the fear of renewed military occupation from Russia. At the same time, I found it worrying to hear the old imperial narratives surface again in the 2 days context. What I'm working towards through research and upcoming film is the way of approaching peatlands as more than potential local fuel, job places, disappearing ecosystem, or climate superheroes, because I think it's nothing more than continuing perception of wetlands as a natural resource. I understand wetland as the complex relational landscapes. They've been shaped labor, politics, and industrial planning, but they also shape those who live with them. I'm interested in these entanglements between land and policy, between bodies and infrastructure, between memory and instruction. And this process led me to invention of swamp spirit, a being that emerged from my memory, imagination, and landscape itself. Across cultures, wetlands are home to mythological beings. Geologist Ilse Azola once told me about Purva Vents, the bog devil of Sigulda, Latvia. In 1970s, a 5-meter oak sculpture of this figure was erected as a monument to the Soviet land reclamation. It symbolized a dark force that turned fertile soil into unusable swamp and was built to guard against the swamp's return. I got interested in this Soviet myth-making pattern, and basically with my swamp spirit, I'm trying to turn it upside down. So my swamp spirit echo this figure, but with the opposite intent. Its imagined presence was source of connection to the place I'm coming from and my growing distance from it. The spirit became the central figure in my film, existing across past, present, and future, and across different localities. The working title of this film is In Zombie Fire, which is, so it refers to the underground smoldering of peat-rich soils. This fire that can smolder for months or even years beneath the surface. But this title also points to these fires as metaphor for the imperial legacies that it smolders around us as well. So they keep burning below the surface, quiet and unresolved. And I think there is the urgent need to confront and rework it. Thank you.